Again, Steve. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
How's it going? What's going on? Talk to me.
Too much.
Stephen is working on. He's planning to build an Orgone accumulator. We're gonna banish cloudy weather for all time from this peninsula.
Well, that's the cloud buster, the accumulators for other things.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Steve. Well, it's an honor to have you guys both here. So, Steve, you're building yourself a Orgone collector, which is a box that has layers of organic and inorganic material.
I just started looking into it. I saw the plans online, but it accumulates the Orgone, but that's for the future. Tomorrow, James and I are actually going to go make orgonite pendants.
Oh, right on.
So we're going to go into Seoul and get the material.
Okay. Very important when you do that you're a couple things I want to share with you. First of all, your quartz crystal. You got to have the quartz crystal because that's the workhorse, and it's very important that when you create these things, is that you have to have very good intentions and very good energy around those crystals when you make them, because you're going to be programming them when they go in, before they go in there. So they're going to hold that program. So play some nice music and remember what's coming out of your brains is the most powerful programming that you can give those crystals. So do that. Also, if you're going to use coiled wire, and a lot of people like to put coils of copper wire in there. It's sort of important. Now, this is kind of tricky. You might want to experiment with it, but sometimes if the wire is coiling in a clockwise pattern versus a counterclockwise pattern, the effect will be different because it will amplify the male energy or the female energy greater. So you might want to experiment with that because I've found that sometimes men and women can be affected differently by the Orgone, depending on how that copper wire is turned inside of it.
Well, I have a question to that. When you say counterclockwise or counterclockwise, when viewed from the front?
Well, let me just say
down?
this. The male energy travels clockwise downward, and female energy travels counterclockwise upward. Okay, so just think of that when you twist the wire. It's going to be like an antenna, and you want to just be aware. Some people actually they combine it both directions. If you can do that, that might be the way to go. But I recommend when you're making the Orgone to experiment a little bit and see if there's any difference between the different configurations.
What about metal shavings? From lathing and stuff like that.
Okay, the metal shavings, iron, of course, is the best. Copper is fine. I like to have a 50-50 ratio of metal to resin. Okay, some people say that's not necessary, but I prefer to have at least a 50-50 ratio. All the extraneous crystals, like if you're going to add extra crystals like crystal powders and stuff, that's not really so important as the main quartz crystal, and it's got to be quartz. If you want to add different crystals like amethyst or tourmaline or what have you, yes, those will do certain things. They'll have different effects, but from the standpoint of the etheric effects electronically, the only crystal that's going to really do that is the quartz and possibly rose quartz, because the quartz, the white quartz, the standard quartz, is thermoelectric as well as piezoelectric, and the rose quartz is thermoelectric. And you need to have a piezoelectric happening in orgonite, because when the resin sets up, it compresses the quartz crystal, and that's what causes the piezoelectric activity, which is like turning the damn thing on. Anyway.
What about adding some gold to it?
Gold is cool if you want to do that. I certainly wouldn't add a lot of gold, but yeah, it's. But I think the thing is I think a ferrous metal is really what you want as opposed to a non-ferrous. Okay.
I found a website saying that they use aluminum
Yeah, well, aluminum is a non-ferrous, of course, but there's definitely a difference between the ferrous and non. Any metal, of course, is okay because it's technically non-organic. Okay, that's the whole thing, is it's organic and non-organic. But like if you're making an Orgone accumulator box, typically what they'll use is they'll make like a plywood box, and they'll cover it with steel wool, and then they'll put another layer of wood over that, something like that. And depending on the layer or the direction of the layer between organic to non-organic and back and forth will determine the direction of the energy flow. It's kind of like a battery with the lead and zinc plates, same kind of concept.
I was wondering if there's any way to develop something a little bit better than the rectangular box version, like maybe a pyramid and some other material. I don't know.
Well,
Orgone accumulator.
It's not really the same thing. See, a pyramid per se, pyramid energy. Let me just tell you about pyramids real quick. Obviously, there's a lot of energy that is focusing. A pyramid is a focusing. It's like a lens. Okay, the actual shape of the pyramid is the same as if you look at a crystal, like the top of a crystal. And what that does is it takes ambient energy and focuses it at a central point, preferably where your head is located. So now with an Orgone box, it's the shape of the box really doesn't matter if it was round or rectangular or square or whatever, because it's almost like an air filter. It's like a big sponge that's sucking in this energy out of the air and trapping it inside the box per se. So yeah, the shape doesn't really matter. And if you look at the Ark of the Covenant, that's a classic Orgone collector right there. That's what that was. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that. I definitely encourage everybody out there to make orgonite. So, and if you don't know what orgonite is, Google it. It's a great thing to have in your house, especially if you're anywhere near Fukushima or where I'm at in California or anywhere in the downwind of the radiation. It's a good idea to get some orgonite somewhere in your house to help clean up that nastiness that's around you. So,
I have another question.
I was wondering.
Okay, what is that? Who's this? James? James or Scott? Or Steve?
I be honest, I've been skeptical of the whole Orgonite thing for a while now, but I saw a video which I shared in the last couple of days with Stephen. It showed just a guy with what was it, Stephen? An electromagnetic radiation detector, or electromagnetic energy, something like that, detector of some kind. And he had it parked up next to a power strip where he had a electric fan plugged it into the power strip, turned on the fan. The detector goes up, and starts to click and whatnot. And he takes chunks of quartz and different crystals and places them near the power strip and near the detector, and it doesn't influence it. And then he takes the orgonite pendant, places it on the detector, and it plummets. It goes from a reading of like 300 down to like 12. Mm. And he takes away the orgonite pendant, and it skyrockets again. And then he takes a chunk of quartz and he puts it there, and it doesn't do anything. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of like wondering, what's the deal with people are saying you have to have quartz in there. You're saying you have to have quartz in there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll
why
tell you.
Why doesn't the quartz make any difference?
Okay. The quartz, it's kind of like building a computer and pulling the processor out of the motherboard and saying, why is it not working? It's a system. Okay. Now technology wise, what orgonite does is it's moving energy. Now, when we talk about moving energy, that's like moving ions, basically, because we're talking about ions at this point, and it's no different than when you have a battery and you're moving the positive ions and creating a DC flow of electricity. It's the same exact thing. It also works the same as a capacitor. If you look at a capacitor, basically a capacitor is two sheets of material with organic material in between them, and the electrons, of course, they store up in this thing. So an Orgone box collector is like a big capacitor. An orgone device is like an air cleaner, and what it does is that the combination of the organic and the inorganic material is actually the collector. And what it is it's sort of like a battery where you've got the layers of the two different materials cause the ions to move in a certain direction. So having this combination of materials acts as like a sponge, and it sucks the ions right out of the air. What it does is it acts like it creates a little vacuum, if you will, by putting out some negative or actually positive ions. Now, a positive ion field is going to be like a bubble in the atmosphere, because the ambient air around us is primarily negative energy. It's primarily negative ions. So when you produce positive ions, it creates like a bubble, and the negative ions rush to fill it like a cavity, because obviously they're attracted to the positive. It's pretty logical. So what happens is that when you create this device, the nearby ions are actually sucked in. They are focused into the crystal, and this is where it's going to get a little bit complicated. But as I said, the top of the crystal, the point, acts as a lens, and it actually focuses. It's a collimating lens. It focuses the energy into the center of the crystal. Now, the atomic structure of the crystal actually has a tetrahedral structure, which means that the spaces in between the atoms form a helical coil, a hollow helical tube, if you will. So it's almost like if you were to drop a bunch of marbles on a crystal, microscopic marbles, they would flow through this thing like a pachinko machine swirling around in a helical fashion. Okay, that's what happens. So basically what that means is that as the energy is drawn into this device, it's actually focused into the quartz crystal. When it goes into the quartz crystal takes that energy, which is non-coherent ions. It forces them into a parallel path, which also has a circular helical trajectory, and that creates coherent, clean energy, or positive energy, also live energy, because that's the difference between not being alive and being alive, is that the energy is coherent and it's structured. It's the same thing works with water. When we talk about water being alive or not being alive, it's because water and H2O, the hydrogen and the oxygen are able to cause what's called hydrogen bonds because of the positive and negative charge of the hydrogen and the oxygen. And when water forms complete hydrogen bonds, it creates a helical crystalline structure exactly like the structure of a quartz crystal. And this is why water is a chi superconductor, or an energy superconductor. And by the same token, this is why a quartz crystal is able to contain massive amounts of energy, because not only does it act like a sponge, but it actually takes that energy and organizes it and cleans it and creates coherent energy. But like we said with the piezoelectric effect, when you create an orgone device using a piece of quartz, standard white quartz crystal, and it becomes compressed by the contraction of the resin, you're actually going to see that device produce an aura. And if you were to take a Carillion camera and, say, photograph any living object, be it a human or an animal or a leaf off of a tree, you're going to see that it has an electromagnetic signature, otherwise known as an aura, or a biophosphorence, bioluminescence. And if you were to take a tree, for instance, or a leaf off a tree, or even a vegetable or something that you've cut, you'll notice that the life energy or the bioluminescence will actually leave. And they show food as it's being cooked. Raw food actually is full of life and bioluminescence, but if it's been slightly cooked, it starts to lose that. Now, if it's been boiled or microwaved, it's gone completely. If you steam it a little bit, you're still a little bit of life in there. But the point is that if you take a crystal, which of course is a non-living entity, and you take this, you put it inside of the resin with steel, suddenly it is going to produce this piezoelectric energy, which will cause it to glow and have a blue aura, just like a human might have. So essentially, you're creating life energy just by creating this thing.
Could I have another question, Richard?
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of us, you and I previously discussed this, what I call the golemization
Yeah.
of our species. And, just all of the various vectors of mind control, neurophysiological influence that those of you out there who are familiar with it know what I'm talking about. My question is this: can this stuff, and it can have wearing this pendant around your neck, keeping it on your person, can it protect you from these vectors of nefarious influence?
Yeah, it's very helpful. Okay, and this is why. First of all, again, assuming that you've programmed these things to have a very positive intentions and all that, that's very important. But again, it acts like an air cleaner, so it's going to essentially create a perimeter around you that will help protect you from some of this negative this negative information. And it is information. Okay, that's really what it is. But it's information that is detrimental to you, either biologically or mentally. But again, and we've had this conversation, the most powerful thing you can do if you want to protect yourself and increase your auric strength, if you will, is to get into this habit of trying to serve others more than yourself, and that's really going to do the same sort of thing. But like everybody should have orgonite. I really recommend it. And if you're ever going to go on a plane and travel on a plane, you want to have it on you because it's going to certainly protect you from harmful radiation at the very least. And, being around cell phones, cell phone towers, signals from televisions, even signals from fluorescent lighting overhead and things like this. This is all really bad for you. Satellite television, you name it. So, yeah, having an orgonite pendant on you is going to it's going to essentially like carrying around an air cleaner and removing all the pollution around you. It's going to remove all that harmful scalar and electromagnetic radiation pollution.
Stephen, are you still there?